Howdy, this is Bill Olson, and welcome to the second to the last episode of January of Free Speech Zone. We've got an awful lot to talk about today. I've got 3 hours of videos to cram into 50 minutes, so we're going to start right out with the big trial that's going on back east. There's some breaking news in the middle of the week, which we'll get to. And anyway, this is one of those things where the government got caught, and they're trying to do damage control and trying to instill fear in everybody so nobody else will be a whistleblower. Let's see how the trial is going now, the Sterling trial. Go ahead.
And we're at the midway point in the trial for former CIA officer Jeffrey Sterling. Sterling is accused of revealing a top-secret CIA plan to disrupt Iran's nuclear program called Operation Merlin. Today, the prosecution called staffers from the House and Intelligence Committees with whom Sterling allegedly raised these concerns about back in 2003. The prosecution is expecting to call its final witnesses for the case either today or tomorrow. While the trial has received very little coverage from mainstream media, many famous whistleblowers and activists have been following this trial in support of Sterling. I was joined earlier by Director for the Institute of Public Accuracy, Norman Solomon, who's been carefully monitoring the trial. I first asked him what the latest update was from today's court trial.
We've really learned about the innards of this CIA operation called Operation Merlin. Basically, the plan apparently was the CIA was going to feed flawed nuclear weapon design material to an Iranian government office in Vienna with the theory that by putting some major flaws that were undetectable into the diagram, it would throw the Iranian ostensible nuclear program off track. Keep in mind, this was back in the year 2000. Several years before the U.S. government's own intelligence estimate determined that Iran had stopped, if it had one, developing a nuclear weapons program. So in the courthouse this last week, we've heard a lot of testimony from CIA officials trying to pin the blame one way or another on this former CIA officer, Jeffrey Sterling, for allegedly disclosing classified information about this operation.
And in 2003, Jeffrey Sterling met with staffers on the House and Intelligence Committees to bring up those concerns over the potential risks of the operation. Today, those staffers were now witnesses brought on by the prosecution. So what information were they trying to glean from them?
Well, it's important to realize that everybody agrees Jeffrey Sterling went through channels about his racial bias complaint against the CIA. He is one of the few, or was one of the few, African-American employees of the agency. He went to a House committee staff in the year 2000. Then he went to the Senate committee staff after he was no longer at the CIA in early 2003. Then, according to testimony today, and even according to the indictment, he went through channels quite properly in that case to express his concerns about this really, frankly, stupid and dangerous CIA operation called Operation Merlin that went on 15 years ago now. So he went through channels to do that. And in that sense, he was a whistleblower no matter what the truth of this indictment is. The dispute and the trial is about a 10-count indictment charging that he leaked information about this classified operation to New York Times reporter James Risen, who then included it in his book called State of War, which was published in 2006.
Right. Now, I'm curious to know your opinion on this. How much of the prosecutor's case really just comes down to trying to protect the CIA's credibility?
Well, all of it's based on circumstantial evidence, and a lot of it is an effort by the U.S. government through the prosecution to make the case that the CIA doesn't make mistakes, that it had a superb operation called Operation Merlin, and that James Risen's book unfairly tarred the reputation of the CIA. So a lot of this prosecution, I believe, and I've been in the courtroom every day now, a lot of this prosecution is about damage control for the image of the CIA and trying to put a halo on the CIA operation worldwide and put sort of devil horns on Jeffrey Sterling as some sort of villain who allegedly spilled the classified beans. From my perspective and from the vantage point of many activist groups, and rootsaction.org, where I work, had a petition with more than 50,000 signers urging this government to drop all charges against Jeffrey Sterling. In fact, whether or not he disclosed that information to James Risen for his book, it was information that the public absolutely had a right to know. We should know what the CIA is doing in our name with our tax dollars, and that's what whistleblowers are for.
Now, Norman, real quickly here, we're hearing that James Risen will now no longer be forced to testify. But what was surprising was that Condoleezza Rice was a surprise witness that appeared in the courtroom last week. How important was her testimony?
Well, I think Condoleezza Rice's testimony was important to try to impress the jury that very high up, powerful people thought Operation Merlin was a classified operation of great importance, and therefore the information needed to be protected. It was difficult to get in the courtroom the fact that Condoleezza Rice, of course, had overseen the bogus claims about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that led to the invasion of Iraq in terms of the political power to make that happen. So, you know, Rice was unfortunately, I would say, probably an impressive witness to the jury.
All right, Norman, we're going to have to leave that right there. Norman Solomon, thank you very much for...
Yeah, that's way too bad, because we know Condoleezza Rice lied through her teeth about, to get us into the Iraq War. Okay, now what we have here is the CIA getting caught doing an illegal operation against another sovereign nation. If anybody did that to us, it would be a declared state of war in no time at all. And yet we get to do it with impunity. But now, wait, it gets better. Remember who Catherine Harris was, Judge Catherine Harris? She was the judge that ruled that the Section 1033 of the NDAA, the indefinite detention section, was unconstitutional, and she put a permanent injunction against them using it. Of course, that got reversed by the powers that be, but we all cheered and applauded Catherine Harris. Well, along comes the Sterling trial. Right now, the Sterling trial is going on, and Catherine Harris is the judge. So you'd think, well, we have a little bit of hope, don't we? Well, you can throw all that hope away, because you know what an informed jury is? It's somebody who knows that they can judge the law, not just the people accused under that law. They can judge the law, and if the jury thinks the law is unfair, they can strike it down and it becomes irreversible. You cannot contest their decision. So that's why the judge got very upset when she found out somebody was trying to educate the jurors. Play this video and we'll be right back.
I've been saying the whole program that we're going to talk about jury nullification, what's going on with the Silk Road trial in New York. They're using that as an example to try to educate people about not only their rights, but their duties as jurors. Now, what's happening up there is that we've got some activists. You can see this from the website Liberty Crier. They got a lot of pictures of people they put up billboards. They're standing there with signs. They've got signs that say, know your rights. Google jury nullification. Good jurors nullify bad laws. And so this is the activity that's going on in Manhattan. Meanwhile, the judge who's presiding over this case, Judge Catherine Forrest, is pretty upset about this. And so she's threatening to impose a secret jury on this case, the Silk Road case. She basically has said that unless they stop telling people about their rights, about what the real law is, then she's going to anonymize the jury. She's going to bust jurors in from a secret location, blocking their contact from the outside world. And of course, the jurors won't be told that they're being protected from a 100% factual pamphlet about their indisputable rights. And I would say not only their rights, but their duty. Instead, they'll be thanking the judge for protecting them from some dangerous crime boss. Now, that's from the freethoughtproject.com, giving us that summary. If you're not a subscriber to our free newsletter, that's the InfoWars Underground Insider, you wouldn't have seen this. This just came out last couple of days. What they don't want you to know about jury nullification. You can be more powerful than the government. And there's a couple of quotes in here from some of the founding fathers, as well as these two main points. Number one, as a grand juror, you can refuse the government's request to pursue criminal charges against the accused. Number two, as a trial juror, you can acquit the defendant who is charged with breaking unconstitutional laws. Or if you think that the law is valid, you think that they broke it, but you don't think somebody should go to jail for 10, 20 years because they were growing some marijuana in their closet, not selling it to anybody, not doing anything to harm anybody. If you think that the penalties, that the mandatory minimums are too draconian, you don't have to convict. You are the juror. The jurors are in charge, or should be, yet they aren't because the judges are playing games and lying to people. Listen to these two quotes. This is from the first U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice, John Jay. He said, the jury has the right to judge both the law as well as the facts in a controversy. And then this one from John Adams, who said, it would be absurd for jurors to be required to accept the judge's view of the law against their own opinion, their own judgment, their own conscience. That's the essence of jury nullification. That's why the founders of this country put so much stress upon the importance of jurors. Now, I want to go back to Tony in Missouri.
Okay, well, that's in essence what's happening. She decided that, no, we cannot allow the jury to be informed. When you hear about jury nullification, that doesn't mean nullification of the jury. That means the jury has the right to nullify the law. That's the important reason why juries were created in the first place. So, well, anyway, let's move on. You know that the NSA is tapping your phone. They don't even have to tap your phone. They just, the mechanism that transfers your data just dumps to them. But the point is that you knew it was widespread that way, but you thought when you got home that you'd be able to be in the privacy of your home, didn't you? Well, that's changing. For one thing, the cell phones that you carry can be turned on remotely. They can record whatever you're doing, and even if you're not where they're near a cell phone tower, they'll record it and then play it over the cell phone tower to whoever gets that data later. And they want everybody to have a cell phone so bad. You know, those iPhone number 6, the last time I saw a price on it was somewhere between $600 and $800. Well, they want you to have one of those voluntary NSA data collection terminals so badly that now I just got an offer. If I sign up for their service, I can have one of those iPhone 6s for only $49.95. All right. So it's getting cheaper for you to volunteer to turn over all your data now. We're going to go now to David Knight from Infowars.com, and he's going to tell you about the smart meters, smart television, smart everything. And guess what? He says, who's the dumbass now? He kept getting messages that calling him that, but now we'll see. Go ahead and play this. I'll be back.
Well, I thought I'd wear my tinfoil hat today because a few years ago, I told you that the federal government monitors everything you do on the internet and everything you say on your phone. Some of you out there thought I was just being paranoid. I listened to too much Alex Jones. You called me crazy and you said I should be wearing one of these. Others said that, I'm a conspiracy theorist and even called me a dumbass. Well, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and I'm certainly going to give you mine. And if you think I should be wearing a tinfoil hat, perhaps we should also send one of these to former CIA Director David Petraeus, because he's the one who said in a 2012 interview with Wired magazine that the government will routinely spy on us through smart appliances. And lo and behold, Samsung now admits in their so-called privacy policy that their new smart TV can actually monitor your conversations. The policy states, please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to a third party, federal government, through your use of voice recognition. That's voice recognition spyware in your television that can identify who you are by your voice, and it will listen and record everything you do in front of your TV. How do you like that? So what David Petraeus said was true back in 2012. I guess that makes him a conspiracy theorist. Consumer appliances are now being activated and smart. And we're not just talking about your televisions. RFID chips and wireless internet connections also enable your computers, your printers, and even your refrigerators and dishwashers to communicate with each other and spy on you. And I guess we are finally living in George Orwell's 1984 because Big Brother is watching. And I was reading an article the other day in Tech News World where they said that all this smart technology is ripe for exploitation by the NSA. Yeah, you think? The NSA's cyber weapons program includes household appliances. So there you go. In fact, it even gets crazier because we now know that the insurance companies, through the command and control of Obamacare, they plan on using your household appliances like RFID chips in your refrigerators to monitor your eating habits or to see how many beers you had to drink. So they will use the surveillance infrastructure to monitor our behavior. And I guess it really does sound crazy just listening to myself talk. I mean, the government is going to spy on you through RFID chips in your refrigerator. But we can no longer deny this anymore because it's right in front of our face. It's right here in official government documents. The control freaks at the White House, they are absolutely obsessed with surveillance. Many Americans don't realize this, but nothing you do on your cell phone or on the internet is private. The U.S. government monitors all your phone calls, emails, and all internet activity. You are being watched. Anything you do or say will be recorded. Through warrantless cell phone tracking, the federal government can listen to your cell phone even when it's turned off and track everywhere you go. Police departments are now equipped with automated license plate readers, and they are driving around in unmarked vans looking inside your car, in your house, and even under your clothes with the same backscatter technology used by the TSA at airports. The federal government now has billion-dollar surveillance blimps patrolling the skies over major cities. Unmanned drones are being equipped with facial recognition software, and now they are spying on you through household smart appliances, through your computer, your dishwasher, refrigerator, and television.
I have fresh outrage. I never get outrage fatigue when I see them rolling out the nanny state televisions that are already listening to you. I told people like 6-7 years, because I was told by someone at the FBI, I'll leave it at that, that they were using OnStar without warrants to listen to people. And then it was in the New York Times about 5, 6, 7 years after I told you.
So every single day, every cent you pay, every breath you take, every move you make, the federal government will be watching you. After all, the ultimate goal of the NSA is total population control. And yes, it violates our constitutional rights, but most Americans are more concerned about who's going to win the Super Bowl this year. And check this out. I thought this was interesting. We found a clip from 2005 from C-SPAN. And this is when then Senator Joe Biden, he questioned Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts Jr. about implantable microchips to track American citizens. Biden said he will have to rule on that before his tenure is over.
And we'll be faced with equally consequential decisions in the 21st century. Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words, before your tenure is over. Can brain scans be used to determine whether a person is inclined toward criminality or violent behavior? You will rule on that.
Mark my words, huh? More like the mark of the beast. So how close are we to actually having microchips implanted under our skin? Well, according to the NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, we might be a lot closer than you think.
More now of our special coverage here tonight, life in the U.S. in 10 years' time.
The year is 2017. You're rushed to a hospital unconscious with no ID or medical history, but thanks to a microchip under your skin, it's all there. Science fiction 20 years ago, but a biometric reality today. Already, fingerprints and iris scans verify passenger identities at airports. Within 10 years, that technology may be even more widespread. And look for more complex facial recognition programs that scan a crowd of thousands looking for a single terrorist.
So there you have it, and I don't want to say I told you so, but, well, yes I do, because we did tell you so, and we were right all along. And now there's so much information and documented evidence about the federal government's massive surveillance program that you're the one that has to be crazy if you are still denying what's going on all around you right now. Big Brother is indeed watching, my friends.
Okay, now, Big Brother also wants to cover up his tracks on 9/11, and Big Brother is preventing us from reading the 28 redacted pages from the 9/11 Commission report. And we have one valiant representative in our House of Representatives who is doing his very best, Representative Jones. And then here is Alex Jones to interview Representative Jones, no relation.
Let's start talking about 28pages.org. Your move, your bill is getting a lot of attention. I know you just met with one of the heads of the 9/11 Commission a few weeks ago. Tell us about that, please, sir.
Well, I'd like to tell you, your listeners, and I want to give a couple of numbers before you let me go this afternoon. I want the people to know that the 9/11 families who lost so many loved ones when we were attacked on 9/11 have been calling for a declassification of 28 pages that were declassified by the Bush administration after 9/11. 9/11, we had a report that was the report was made by Bob Graham, Senator Graham, Richard Shelby was involved, Porter Goss was involved, and they have all been calling that these 28 pages be declassified. Alex, 2 weeks ago, Bob Graham, who now has a daughter in the Congress elected from Florida, Bob Graham came up and participated in a news conference with Congressman Steve Lynch, Democrat from Massachusetts, Walter Jones, myself, and Thomas Massey, and 9/11 families. This is the third press conference we've had, the first one with Bob Graham, and he has said publicly there is no reason that President Obama does not keep his word to the 9/11 families that he would declassify this information. And I would ask your listeners to please go on the website of 28.com, look at the information on the website. I would also like to ask your listeners to call the White House.
28pages.org is what the staff told us is the best website to go to. And HRRes 14, the phone numbers are on that site. We're going to come back and give you those numbers in 3 minutes. Congressman Walter Jones, a real patriot, is on the line with us. But who's really behind ISIS, which is Al-Qaeda, killing hundreds of thousands of Christians and other innocents, non-radical Muslims in Syria? Saudi Arabia. And where did 15 of the 19 hijackers come from on 9/11? We know where they came from, Saudi Arabia, so we attacked Iraq, something Congressman Jones has been fighting. So Politico points out, what's going on with Walter Jones and all these Republicans that he's got behind him that want to release these pages that will expose the Bush administration? Well, it's just called doing the right thing. And the minute other Republicans start acting like statesmen and not gangsters like Boehner is the day we'll start turning this country around. Sir, Give us our marching orders. What do we do to push this over the edge and get these 28 pages released?
Alex, again, thank you. The families of 9/11, ever since that tragic day that we were attacked by the hijackers, they have been calling on the president since President Bush. He is the one that when they came out with the 9/11 report, the administration reviewed it, and the Bush administration said, no, the 28 pages in this report must be classified. I have read the classified pages, and many of my colleagues have as well, the 28 pages. There is nothing, Alex, in here about national security. If it was, I would not be on your show. I would not introduce this resolution with two other members of the House. What we're asking people around this country, think about the pain of the 9/11 families, and think about you, the American citizen. Don't you have a right to know the truth about who was behind 9/11? Absolutely yes is the answer to that. H Resolution 14, call the White House, and I'll give the number slowly, 202-456-1111. Now let me give the switchboard for your member of Congress, and that switchboard number is 202-224-3121. Call that member of Congress and say, look seriously at joining on House Resolution 14. Now, Alex, let me explain to your listeners very quickly. Any member of Congress in good standing can make a request of the Intel Committee in the House to read the 28 pages. I would hope that they would have time to do that. But if not, please just think about it this way. Just give the families what they've been asking for. They're the ones that were injured. This is a way for the families to get peace and the American people to know the truth about 9/11.
And I know you're not supposed to tell us everything that's in it, but when they use national security to hide crime, we have a responsibility. How much, I mean, you've talked about it before. I've talked to military people that have been involved in the House that have seen it. I mean, basically, it's that Saudi Arabia was running the operation.
Well, I would say this because it's already been actually Bob Graham, who helped write the 9/11 report. He actually said at the news conference that the Saudis were behind the 9/11 attack, and also that this would allow the families, if these 28 pages could be published, this would help the families in their lawsuit against the Saudi Arabian government for damages that were done to the American people on 9/11.
My God, what type of apology do we owe the Iraqi people for blaming them for this?
Well, I don't. To me, I've got a poster. I wish I could send it to you of a Saudi prince with a heavy stomach, leaning back on a pillow and smoking a cigarette with a holder, and seeing Uncle Sam on his knees to the Saudi, and the Saudi saying, "Go get those ISIS thugs, but don't spill any blood on my rug."
It's unbelievable.
I wish I could send that to you. That's why this is about the families who are in pain. This is about the American people knowing the truth. We will not have government for the people if the people don't know the truth. And that's what this is all about.
Well, you've got a lot of courage. You continue to bring in legislation to impeach Obama if he launches more wars without congressional authorization. You bring out legislation like this. I mean, I got to be honest. I love Ron Paul. He was on last week.
I love Ron Paul, too.
And he did a lot of great work fighting the Federal Reserve. But I think you now are even more bold than he was with the type of legislation you're bringing forward, sir. And so I just want to say this. Everybody should be praying for Congressman Walter Jones, because he's the type of leader who isn't a glitter bug, isn't some narcissist, but really cares about his family and grandchildren and this country. And we need more people in Congress like him. Let's give that number out one more time. You can go to jones.house.gov. You can also go to 28pages.org to find all the information. Capitol Switchboard to talk to your member of Congress, 202-224-3121, or White House, 202-456-1111. And even mainstream media admits this is getting a lot of co-sponsors. It's gaining steam, but at least demand that the intelligence committees of the House and Senate read them and then have these members publicly say they've read it, so when it does come out later, they're going to be held politically responsible for aiding and abetting the Saudis, because I'm here to tell you, the Saudis are in an oil war right now with the U.S. to destroy our frackers. They're in a war with Russia right now. That's on record. And Saudi Arabia, I don't want to be a drama queen here, but we've even had some issues. I'm telling you, they're all over the U.S. I don't mean Saudi people, but the Saudi government is too big for its britches. It's manipulating Hollywood. It's buying off U.S. corporations. They're out of control. Yeah. And Congressman, have you had any stuff go on, any scuttlebutt, any manipulation because you're doing this to the Saudis?
No, Alex, I have not. And the way I look at this thing, I know you're the same way. I'm doing God's will because God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to save our souls by his son telling us the truth. And that's what this is all about, is the truth of what happened on 9/11. And I have no excuses but to seek the truth, because that is what will make America stronger.
So the heavens may fall. Justice be done. May the heavens fall. Do the right thing, and that's it. Well, God bless you. Amazing.
Okay, so, yeah, I always wondered why, if the Saudis were so involved, if 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis, then I got an idea. Let's go get Afghanistan and then Iraq. You're not getting any closer to Saudi Arabia that way. Okay, well, the FBI, in an effort to keep a perfect score, if you recall, just about every single terrorist plot that we've talked about, including 9/11, but let's just say the shoe bomber, the underwear bomber, the Christmas tree bomber, every one of those was inspired and promoted and carried off by the FBI to blame on a patsy. Now we're going to see it happening again. This Capitol bomber, the kid that was just arrested, his parents are now saying that he was manipulated by the FBI. What a surprise, surprise, surprise. You know, the biggest threat to the world in the form of terrorism is the FBI. Anyway, that's not just my opinion. Everybody outside of the United States already has that opinion. Okay, so let's play this one and I'll be back.
Charged with plotting to blow up the U.S. Capitol building was a, quote, peace-loving mama's boy, according to his father. Christopher Lee Cornell is from just outside Cincinnati, Ohio. According to federal authorities, he was plotting to attack the Capitol with pipe bombs and to shoot government officials as they ran from the building. His arrest came after he posted on Twitter his support for Muslim terrorists and then showed his plans to an FBI informant who contacted him, according to court documents. At the end of August, Cornell had allegedly written the informant an instant message saying the two of them should carry out a lone wolf attack as a way of supporting ISIS. He didn't think ISIS or Al-Qaeda would give them an official sign-off, but he felt he didn't need it. Cornell's father has told various media outlets, including CNN and CBS News, that his son was definitely set up.
Chris has never been out of Cincinnati. I believe he was coerced into a lot of this stuff. I believe that this so-called snitch filled his head with a lot of stuff.
So is Cornell's father correct? Is it possible that his son was set up by that FBI informant? Cornell purchased 2 AR-15s and 600 rounds of ammo before he was arrested in the parking lot of a gun store in Cincinnati. His father says that his son worked seasonal minimum wage jobs and had saved about $1,200. The guns and ammo purchased closer to $1,800. There are a lot of questions about this story, including how the informant found Cornell in the first place. Who actually posed the idea of the attack? Did Cornell, on his own, have the means or even the opportunity to carry out this kind of attack? All of these questions important because the FBI has made these kinds of arrests over 500 times since 9/11. What we almost never hear, however, is how these arrests are made and the role of that so-called informant. Take, for instance, the case of 8 anarchists who had plotted to blow up a bridge in Cuyahoga County National Park near Cleveland. When the case got to court, it was revealed that the one person in the group who led the brainstorming of targets, showed them bridges to case out, pushed them to buy C4 military-grade explosives, provided the contact for weapons, gave them money for explosives, and demanded they develop a plan because he said, quote, we are on the hook for the weapons, was the FBI informant. In 2004, there was the case of Shahawar Siraj, who was charged with trying to blow up a subway station in New York City. Siraj's attorneys say that he was set up because Siraj had no explosives, he had no timetable for any attack, and he had little understanding about explosives. It was the informant who had pushed for the attack. Not only that, but Siraj had even said that he needed to talk to his mother before he would be able to do anything, and that's when the FBI stepped in. And then there's this case, the Newburgh Four black Muslim men sentenced for plotting to blow up a Bronx synagogue using car bombs and plotting to fire a Stinger missile at U.S. military planes. In this case, these men were offered up to $250,000 by the informant to help with the bombing, as well as free vacations to Puerto Rico and expensive cars. The judge in this case, after giving 3 of the 4 25-year sentences, was clear, stating that, quote, nothing that any of these men did was the product of any independent motivation on their parts. The judge went on to say it is beyond question that government created the crime here, end quote. Well, interestingly, this latest plot out of Cincinnati comes right on the heels of the France terror attacks and concerns about ISIS. The group in Ohio, which was connected to Occupy Cleveland, that was thwarted in the spring of 2012, right around the height of the Occupy movement. I was joined earlier by Daniel McAdams, executive director with the Ron Paul Institute, and I first asked him if there is a timing issue with these kinds of foiled plots.
Well, I think there is. I think you have public attention, on these events, and the public gets very excited. The issue with these foiled plots is there's just an incentive all around to have a big blow up. Of course, the media loves it. They have the most sensational headlines possible. The FBI loves it because they get credit for actually doing something against terrorism. The informants who are involved love it because they usually get some time off prison. And the government loves it because it allows them to pass more restrictive laws and more surveillance laws against Americans to keep us safe. So I think the timing is very important because you have to do it at a time where people are paying attention and people are frightened of these things.
An investigation back in 2012 by Mother Jones and the investigative reporting program at the University of California, Berkeley, found that in 508 terror investigations since 9/11, nearly half involved an informant. The informants were in many cases paid as much as $100,000 per assignment and were working off criminal or immigration violations, which you just mentioned. Also, tips from informants led to 158 prosecutions. But of those 158, 49 of those plots were either led by an FBI operative who instigated terrorist action. The plots did not come from the suspects. They came from the FBI. So how troubling is the way that informants are paid or even themselves coerced into finding potential terrorists here?
Well, Ben, you have to take a good look at our criminal justice system. The way crimes are prosecuted, if you're arrested for one thing, you may end up with 10 different charges on you for committing one act, and they may add up to 20 or 30 years in prison. So you'll find some guy who was a low-level drug dealer, who maybe they say was a resisting arrest or what have you, they pile the charges on, he's facing 30 years, and they offer him an incentive and training. Here's how you do this. Here's how you infiltrate a mosque. Here's how you get this some poor loser with no money. And if you get him to sign on to this plot, then you'll get some time off or all your time off, or you'll get some money, like you pointed out. Glenn Greenwald did a great piece a few days ago where he pointed out this fellow, James Cromedy, who I think was a 45-year-old guy, extremely poor. And they had one of these informants that dogged him for 8 months. The guy kept refusing to participate, kept refusing. For 8 months, this guy was on him. He finally offered him $250,000, which couldn't you imagine if you're some absolutely impoverished guy? This seems like a dream come true. And so he was, worn down by this relentless attempt, and he relented. And as soon as that happens, the law requires you to take one positive action toward committing a terrorist act, and that's when they zero in and arrest you. So all they need you to do is make that one positive action. And really the line between creating a terror plot and entrapment is now in the United States so fine I don't think anyone can see through it.
Well, and while that's true, I think going back to that case of the Nuremberg 4, which I think you're referring to here as well, this particular case is very interesting because in that case, the federal judge who looked at it in the first place said that the FBI was responsible, that they were the ones who created the plot. When the appeal happened in this process, these 4 guys, their lawyers are saying, look, it's clearly entrapment. The judge, you know that this is the case, and the judge looked at it, and there's a lot of indications that because it was a synagogue that was being targeted, the judge was afraid to, essentially say that the FBI had entrapped them. But on this issue of entrapment, let's talk about that, because the legal definition means an informant can choose the location, the informant can provide the bombs, the guns, the plan, the date, the time, as long as the suspect intended on some level to commit a crime. As you said, takes one step forward, then they say, well, it's not entrapment. We found that bad apple that we were looking for. And in that 2003 case, in particular of the Nuremberg 4, every encounter between the authorities and these guys was recorded over time, except for key interviews. And by the way, the judge in this case simply said that what was being done here was immoral, it was unethical, but it was not illegal.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We ran an article on the Ron Paul Institute website a couple of years ago about the New York City Police Department's monitoring and infiltrating of mosques. What they do is they declare an entire mosque a terrorism enterprise, and so that gives them the legal authority to go in and not just monitor, but to develop people, to develop suspects, and they have different ways of profiling people. They look for the most radical and outspoken. They have this whole sort of psychological profile. So they have, it was actually exposed that they've had a years-long project of infiltrating mosques in New York City through the New York Police Department and identifying some of these people. So it's, as you say, they're actively searching for people who they can turn into terrorists.
Well, and as you pointed out in the other case as well, when you're offering someone $250,000 to commit a crime, a new BMW, paid vacations and holidays, if you can offer enough people enough stuff, you can find someone who will agree to commit a violent act. But does that mean that the FBI is then thwarting attacks, or are they creating the plot in the first place only in order to break it up? I'll give you the last word here, about 20 seconds left.
Well, what's sad is in the case of the fellows in Florida several years ago, it was simply a pair of tennis shoes that got them to do this. It's actually quite sad. The other thing that's very interesting, I think, is that what the FBI uses to get these, a lot of them are Muslim converts, to get them worked up and motivated to do these things is they tell them about U.S. foreign policy and what the U.S. is doing overseas. So that's sort of an implicit admission that they are not killing us because we're free or attacking us because we're free. They're attacking us because they're worked up over U.S. foreign policy. And in this case, the U.S. government admits it and uses it to their advantage.
Uses their own actions in order to inflame people who they then arrest for being inflamed. Absolutely. Daniel McAdams, Executive Director with the Ron Paul Institute. Thanks so much for your insight.
Okay, now I support a lot of things about Ron Paul, but right now he's trying to take away my Social Security. So Ron Paul, bleh. But anyway, yeah, I've been waiting for somebody to offer me money, not to do a terrorist act, but people have been saying I've been doing my 9/11 show. Have they bothered you? No, they haven't. Where's my $500,000 to stop doing it? Where's my $1 million to leave the state and never get on TV again? Huh? Try it. I'm telling you, you don't have to search for somebody like that. You can pay me $1 million and I'll quit. You don't have to kill anybody or anything, and it's a legal deal. You won't even be prosecuted for it later. Oh well, we'll see what happens about that. But in the meantime, we see what's going on. 9/11 is what we use to tighten up all the laws and start paying money big time to the military-industrial complex. Well, overseas, they thought that was such a good idea, the elite power structure overseas. France thought that was such a wonderful idea, they thought they'd try it themselves. So they do this Paris shooting thing, and now, as in the wake of that, they get to really tighten up the screws on those damn Muslims, right? Okay, so let's show this one, and we'll Be right back.
Out of Pakistan, where a rally against the latest installment of the French political publication Charlie Hebdo turned violent. Police fired warning shots and water cannons to disperse the demonstration, while a photographer with the agency France Presse was shot and wounded during a scuffle. It's unclear who fired that shot, but the AFP says the photographer, identified as Asif Hassan, has undergone surgery and that his life is no longer in danger. But while the protests in Pakistan spiraled into mayhem, those that took place in other parts of the Muslim world remained peaceful. Meanwhile, in Europe, police arrested dozens of suspects in anti-terrorism raids as authorities rushed to crack down on people with links to Islamic extremists in the Middle East. In France, police arrested 12 people who are suspected of helping the gunman in last week's killings in Paris. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was visiting the French capital today to express condolences over those killings. And in Belgium, police killed 2 and detained 13 suspects in raids on an Islamic group that prosecutors say were planning a separate attack on police over there. 2 related suspects were arrested in France and 2 in Germany. No link was made between any of them and the Paris attacks. For more on that, though, let's go to RT's Tessa Arcilla.
12 searches conducted by the authorities from late last night, yesterday afternoon to late last night. They have found a lot of weapons, AK-47s, rifles, munitions, explosives, as well as money, false documents, and police uniforms. This seems to coincide with the intelligence that they had that the terror cells here were planning attacks on policemen or police stations, as well as in public places. Police stations here are on high alert. Cars are not allowed to park in front of them because of those suspected plans of these terror cells. Also, they don't want to give that many details on the nationalities of those that are detained or the identities of the 2 suspects that were killed in a raid yesterday. We know that in France, authorities are also continuing with their questioning. People have been brought in for questioning in order to find out more information about possible accomplices or how vast the terror network is of those involved in the Paris attacks. We also know that in Berlin, in Germany, massive raids were conducted by police, and the prosecutor's office in Germany confirmed the arrest of 2 suspected members of an extremist cell that was reportedly planning an attack in Syria. So as you can imagine, the feeling across Europe in various countries is one of being on edge, of stress. In Paris, we saw troops being deployed in the streets. This, of course, had added to the anxiety of people seeing uniformed men with guns. Everybody is simply on edge, waiting for more information on what the police can give on these suspected terror cells.
Okay, now I don't trust any of these governments any farther than I can throw them because they have such a long, uninterrupted history of lying about everything. So what makes anybody think that they're telling the truth about these guys they're arresting? Isn't it going to be just exactly like what the United States did with Afghanistan and Iraq? Lie, lie, lie. They were 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. Lie, lie, lie is what they did. And now they're arresting everybody around in Paris. Well, guess what? It's not a coincidence. In fact, we've got Fox News working to contaminate the information. They are lying to everybody, making it sound like there are areas all over Paris that white people can't go into those areas. Oh my God, Muslims only. Oh, what does this world come to? But it turns out every bit of it was a lie, like you expect from Fox News. Everything they say is a lie, every single time. That's not just exaggeration. So go ahead and play this. It's just about a minute long. We'll be right back.
Interdites de Fox News.
Vous le définiriez comment, ce quartier?
Quartier pas cher, sympathique, c'est tout, vraiment. Moi, je fais mes courses ici.
On a à Belleville, il y a des juifs, il y a des arabes, il y a des chinois, il y a des chrétiens, il y a des athées, il y a tout.
Est-ce que vous avez déjà vu des jeunes avec des t-shirts Ben Laden dans le quartier?
Non. PSG, Marseille, oui.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier qu'on pourrait comparer à l'Irak ou l'Afghanistan?
Du tout.
qu'on pourrait comparer ce quartier avec l'Afghanistan ou l'Irak?
Non, pas du tout. On est quand même en France. Hein.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier que l'on pourrait comparer à l'Irak ou l'Afghanistan?
Non, c'est ridicule.
Vous le définiriez comment, ce quartier?
Il est cool, hein, pas de problème.
Au calme.
C'est bon vivre ici. Depuis que je suis petit, j'habite ici, un peu de problème, c'est cool ici.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier qui pourrait ressembler à l'Afghanistan ou à l'Irak?
Non, je suis choqué. Alors là, votre question, excusez-moi, mais elle est un peu stupide.
And we're at the midway point
Okay,
in the...
I forgot to tell you, that was in Paris. They were taking that little inset there was Fox News, where it was showing the little areas in red where only Muslims could go, and then they interviewed people in those areas, and it was obvious it was a total lie. So, thank you, Fox News, for showing that even internationally you can't be trusted. So we're going to move on to the next one now. I'll just go ahead and run it so I don't waste time trying to remember.
Anti-Islamic sentiment is whipping up a storm in the U.S. city of San Francisco. There, posters comparing Islam to Nazism have been plastered onto buses. So one of the images shows Hitler meeting a Palestinian leader during World War II. RT's Lindsay France has the story.
The group who financed this ad campaign is well known for financing these sorts of things. It's called the American Freedom Defense Initiative. It purchased 50 large banners for the sides of municipal bus services in San Francisco. Now, the ads are very shocking, and the spirit behind them is most certainly hateful. That was cited by city leaders who said they do not condone the messages and the spirit behind them. However, this is protected by the freedom of speech in the Constitution. In fact, the group even secured a legal ruling to sort of fend off any sort of legal rebuttals to these ads. This is not the first time they've seen this sort of thing from this group. It's a well-known anti-Islamic group. Actually, in 2013, it did the same sort of ad campaign featuring photos of Osama bin Laden, a victim of the Fort Hood mass shooting, and even the Times Square bomber, and a quote attributed to Hamas MTV, which read, "Killing Jews is worship that brings us closer to Allah." So this is not the first time San Franciscans have been exposed to this, and there's just a lot of anger about inciting this sort of hatred at a time like this.
Okay, I'm back again, and yeah, it just shows you all around the place, people are absolutely trying to inflame the situation. It's exactly like people are trying to do here in the United States, trying to foment a race war between blacks and whites, accenting everything they can over Ferguson. We know that, who was it, George Soros spent $33 million, I think, to make that situation worse, to try to get riots going. We'll have to get you information on that later. But here's the resident. That's that lady that I've showed you before. One of these days I'll figure out what her name is. But anyway, she's so right on most of the stuff she talks about. But did you know that so many houses are in foreclosure now that when you see a no trespassing sign on a house, cops assume it's a foreclosed and closed house, and if they see somebody in it, they get to just go kick the door in. Go ahead and play this one.
Officers, they cannot arrest you for it, even though many have arrested people in the past citing disorderly conduct after they flipped the bird.
No trespassing sign. You know, those incredibly unneighborly, unfriendly signs that say, "Get the hell away from my property, whoever you are." So on the website Daily Cause, someone wrote a post recounting an event that involves a no trespassing sign. According to the author, he was home, chilling, typing away at his computer, when he heard the door open and close. He just figured it was his brother coming home for lunch, so he wasn't alarmed or anything. But when he turned to look at the door, he says he was stunned to see a uniformed Pennsylvania state trooper striding on into the room. The cop didn't knock or announce himself, he just barged in and started questioning the guy in his home. The cop asked him to identify himself, whether or not he lived there, that kind of thing. The guy said he answered all the cops' questions because he was brought up to fear the police. Not because he's black, but because he's poor. And he says poor white boys are taught to fear the cops too, you know. Anyway, so after answering all the cops' questions, the guy said he finally asked the cop, "Why are you here? And why didn't you knock?" And the cop told him that he had probable cause to enter the house because the guy had posted a no trespassing sign. The cop said that in his experience, a no trespassing sign usually means, now in today's insane society, that the house is in bank foreclosure. So we wanted to be sure the guy wasn't just squatting in an empty, foreclosed house. Now, the guy just posted this on the Daily Cops, and Reddit picked it up and got people talking about it, but there's no incident report or other evidence to confirm his story. But from the post, it doesn't sound like the guy had anything to gain by making up this story, and it raises some interesting points. First, you should know that no trespassing signs do not legally prevent cops from ever coming onto your property. Individuals are legally supposed to ask if they can come onto your property. So no trespassing signs are just a way to say no to all individuals all the time, that they can never come on your property. The signs have no authority over law enforcement, though. Which brings us to interesting point number 2. And that's the fact that this sentiment of stay away everyone is now so common, and people losing their homes is so common, that now trespassing signs are actual invitations to law enforcement to do the exact opposite. How's that for some irony for you? We live in some really unfriendly times, my friends. Tonight, let's talk about that.
Okay, well, yeah, I have to be out of my house by the end of March. Thank you, banks. Well, that was taxes. But anyway, so we have one more clip. We won't be able to see the whole clip, and I'll be back next week. This clip is an interesting one. Did you know that the courts just decided that you can give the finger to the cops? Go ahead and play it.
Court has ruled that it's 100% legal for you to flip the bird at police officers. They cannot arrest you for it, even though many have arrested people in the past citing disorderly conduct after they flip the bird. Now, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit ruled that the ancient gesture of insult is not the basis for a reasonable suspicion of a traffic violation or impending criminal activity. This is interesting. I didn't know whether or not you could get arrested for this, because it should be protected under speech, right? Because it is a form of speech.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant, but we don't have any laws that ban unpleasant speech. And so it's ridiculous for a cop to arrest you for it. But even if the federal court ruled this way, I'm pretty sure that they can find some sort of loophole to arrest you anyway.
Right. So there's two things here. So first off, in terms of the speech, it was making me think, what can't you say to a cop? I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But what can you tell a cop? Steve maybe knows. Can you tell a cop, go fuck yourself? Are you allowed to say that to a cop? Is that an arrestable offense? I'm not sure.
I don't think that that's an arrestable offense, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so
Steve, do you know?
I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty certain that that's not an offense they can be arrested
Right,
for.
I'm sure you can't threaten a cop.
That's the definition of free speech.
Right, so I'm sure you can't threaten a cop's life, but you can say, go fuck yourself to a cop. Let's assume that's the truth. We'll double check on that. Well, then there's no reason that you can't flip them the bird too, right?
Right. And also, I mean, you shouldn't be criminalized for insulting someone, regardless of who that person is.
Yeah.
Even if it's a cop, you should be able to insult a cop. You shouldn't be arrested for that, right? Now, if there's real disorderly conduct, right, if you're like throwing feces at the wall, then yeah, maybe it would make sense for you to get arrested. But something like this should be protected under free speech.
Yeah, the cops cannot be happy about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they get this already in the first place. We have such a heightened sensitivity to what's going on with the police right now that more of this is just, I feel like, unfortunately, while I have no problem with this, and this is how it should be, more of this is not going to help this.